Excited to share. It's great to be with you. There's some folks. No, not at all. Got worse. If you can't read this, I just thought I had to start with this. So this says what society thinks I do, what my parents think I do, what my friends think I do, what my church thinks I do. I don't know if that's what you think I do. What I should do, Mother Teresa, and what I actually do. I was kidding. And I just got to give you one more because I think these are funny. This is about preachers. What my friends think I do, what my mom thinks I do, what the world thinks I do, what my colleagues think I do, what I think I do, what I usually do. Thought that'd be a good little way to kick off our time. Well, thank you all for being here. I'm delighted to share with you a little bit about my sabbatical time, and I'm going to try to not steal all of Laura's thunder. We didn't do absolutely everything together, but we were together for most of it. So I'm going to share things from my point of view. And our sabbatical, it really kind of had several different sort of sections. And so I'm going to kind of just go through those and reflect a little bit on what we did, what was fun, but also what I was thinking. At the end, I'm going to share with you a couple books that I got to read that were just really, really impactful to me. And I'm pleased to report that they were not books that have anything to do with theology or the church. I applied for a grant through Catawba College. I'm a part of their clergy initiative called Communities in Practice. And so throughout the last 2 years, I've met with a group of pastors from different denominations around Salisbury. And through that initiative, received a grant. And using some of those funds, I said on the grant, I'm not going to read a page of theology because that's what I tend to do at work. If I'm going to read, that's what I'm going to read. And so instead I brought a lot of poetry books and some fiction, and especially one fiction book that I bet some of you have read. I'm excited to share with you about at the end. So as I was thinking about sabbatical, a part of what sort of rung around in my head is this story from the book of Exodus. It's one of my favorite stories in the Bible. Moses is in the wilderness, and he's spent 40 years growing up in the land of Egypt. And Moses was sort of part Egyptian, part Hebrew, and he never felt really at home in either world. And then he goes and he leaves because he's killed a man, which that part of the story I don't resonate as much with. But he's leading the flocks in the wilderness near Mount Sinai, and he meets God at a burning bush. And one of the things that God says is he tells Moses to go back. And that a part of Moses' calling is going to be to go back to the land from which he came. Before Moses is told to go back to the land from which he came, there's these 7 different verbs from the root verb for to see in Hebrew. And it says that when Moses saw the bush, he turned aside to see and saw a great sight. It's like see. And rabbis have speculated when they've read that verse that what would have happened to the entire destiny of the people of Israel if Moses hadn't at that very moment been paying attention to what was happening in his midst. So one of the things that I really wanted to focus on during my sabbatical was what I would call perceiving wonder and really opening my eyes and slowing down to see all that God has done in the past 7 years, but also what God is doing in my midst. And so a part of what we did is I got to return home. This is a picture of what is called Big Red. Big Red is a lighthouse about a mile from where I grew up. So a beautiful picture of Big Red. And I'll just give you some autobiographical stuff. So this is a picture of my family. You've got my dad and my mom, which y'all have seen. they're going to be here in about a month, so you get to see them again. Dad grew up in Holland, Michigan. Mom grew up in Washington State. And then behind me, you've got my middle sister, Lindy, who lives in Illinois and has 3 kids. And then next to me, you've got my sister, Michelle, who lives just outside of Holland and has 2 kids. And then the star of the show right there in the middle, sporting a Charlotte FC shirt. You're welcome. You can take the boy out of North Carolina, but and yes, the youngest there, youngest and only son, as I like to remind my sisters. And that's a picture in my parents' house. And one of the things that was really, really life-giving on sabbatical is, I'm 36 years old, and I lived in Holland for my first 18 years of life. And when I left for Seattle Pacific University, 3,000 miles from where I grew up, I was 18. I just wanted to go on a big adventure. I wasn't really thinking about the ramifications of leaving. But it's interesting that I have now lived half of my life not at home. And it's interesting, as somebody who loves home and who loves my family deeply. We have a great relationship. We have a lot of fun together. It was interesting on sabbatical to get some more time at home with the places and the people that I grew up with. And it felt like that living through that command that God gave to Moses, return to your homeland. We got some lovely time with the girls and with family. So this is taking a place called Crystal Lake. It's a special place for my family. We go there 1 week every single year. You can see the boat in the background. We're not one of those families that vacations and hikes and goes out on big outings and fills up the schedule. Laura's family is more that way. My family's we're not going to do anything but eat and sit on the beach. And the biggest thing, hardest thing we do each day is probably putting on the life jacket, which can be tough if it's cold and wet. But we just play in the water. And this year, Joanna was the queen of the tube. And what was really funny to me was that she would tell everybody every single day what the schedule was for the tube. So she'd go up to my dad and say, "Papa, you're going to drive me on the tube, and I'm going to go with my 2 cousins, and then Daddy's going to come, and we are going to go outside of the wake every single time." I was like, all right. She was a tube mate. Yeah, she was brave. She was brave. So lovely, lovely, lovely time at home. So this is the shore of Lake Michigan. And an interesting question that I would ask you, and this is sort of a Lord of the Rings related question, but if you don't know Lord of the Rings, that's okay. So there's a place in the Lord of the Rings story called the Shire, okay? And the Shire is like a place of peace and rest. It's this place with, Laura's going to talk about green pastures and still waters from Psalm 23 today. The Shire in the Lord of the Rings is this place of serenity and stillness. So what I would ask you to think about is, where is that place for you? Where's your Shire? Where is your place of peace and stillness? And maybe it's just a chair in your house because you're too busy to have a place of stillness. Maybe it's the mountains. Maybe it's Coco Java at 2 p.m. You know who you are. But these, in the book of Genesis, human beings are made from clay and dirt. We're dust creatures. We're created from the dust. We're not created out of just nothing. We're created from dust. God takes dust from the ground and he breathes into the dust the breath of life, which is the word for spirit. The ruach of God is breathed into the dust and thus becomes Adam, which the name Adam, it just means human being. So what that means is that we as creatures with bodies that are souls, we are connected deeply to the places of this earth. And so a part of what I'm getting at in that question of where is your Shire is, where are those places in the world, those physical places that have just got under your skin where you feel most alive? This is a picture of one of them for me, which is Lake Michigan. You don't really think as you're growing up of how the place that you lived and grew up formed and shaped you. I grew up about, basically a little walk down a hill from this. And I grew up, yeah, I know, it's pretty cool. And for those of you who haven't seen Lake Michigan, it's big enough that if you were there, you'd think it was an ocean, and the beaches are the best ever. So just wanted to put that shameless plug in there. But I didn't really think about it, because when you're growing up, you don't think about how the place that you're in is actually shaping you, but you're a dust creature. You're made from the earth. And what I realized in going back home was how meaningful it was to me to be around specifically the water and the shoreline. And there was something about getting to watch the waves slowly come in and diving into the waves every day that reminded me of when I was 12 and 13, and my dad at 9 o'clock at night would come and grab me and my sisters in the summertime, because the sun doesn't really set in Michigan until like 10 p.m. And he would say, let's go for a night swim. And so me and my sisters, we'd throw our bathing suits on, we'd sprint up the hill, and you have to run down the dune as fast as you can, and sometimes you fall flat on your face and sprint into the water. And there is something, it's part of the reason why I like swimming at the Y too. There is something to being physically held by the waters. And I'm not going to talk too much about waters in the Bible, because Laura's whole sermon, spoiler alert, is about the ways in which water manifests itself in Scripture. But this is a place for me, a shire, or another Celtic phrase is the thin place. Thin places are, the idea is that a thin place is where heaven and earth intersect, so that it feels thin. Feels like you realize how close heaven and earth really are. Does anyone want to share what your shire is? Yeah, Carl.
It's my back porch. Really hairy design, but lived in. Look out at ponds, rock garden, bird feeders, birds flying in and out. Regular backyard, somebody else takes care of.
That sounds like a good shire. Anybody else? Yeah.
I'm a stranger, and I've been a teacher all my life. And my place where I feel closest to God is in the classroom teaching myself.
That's lovely. Carl said in the Sunday school. Yeah, Lynn.
I have to tell a story about Lake Michigan. I grew up in Great Lakes too, and you were saying it's like the ocean. I remember taking my girls there, and they would swim in the water, and they would say, "The sand doesn't stick to me."
That's right.
And I said, "Because it's not salt water; it's fresh water." They were so amazed. But my place,
The garden. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, as we say in Michigan, no salt, no sharks, no shells. Possibly the greatest beaches of all time. Yeah. Carol.
every day about 4 o'clock, usually someplace in our yard, and he likes to listen to BBN radio, which is a children's show, for a half hour.
Just a big kid.
And we sit there every day, and I always say, this is my favorite time of the day, to just sit with them and listen to a children's show.
Yeah. In the Gospels, Jesus, he kind of interrupts the flow of his ministry where he's healing and teaching, and it says he withdraws to solitary places in the wilderness to pray. And it's interesting to think about that, couldn't Jesus have spent that time being a little more productive and healing some people? I mean, who didn't get healed because Jesus withdrew to solitary places, right? But so it's an invitation to you as somebody who had the gift of getting to go back to the thin places and to my shire. Where is that place for you, and how can you find some time to be there? And isn't it interesting how, in just hearing a couple people's thin places or their shires, it tells you a lot about who they are, right? It tells you a lot about who they are. So this is my thin place. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what Laura and I did with the beach. This is just my favorite picture from Sabbatical. So Laura and I rented this small little 900-foot fixer-upper times 75 cabin. But as you can see, this is the deck here, and then just 60 stairs that one could fall through. When we first got there, we were like, "Ooh, one of our girls is going to get hurt." But then it was just there was the beach, right? And so we just got to sit out there, and Joanna was supposed to have been in bed. Actually, my joke with Joanna is always that, well, Joanna, normally in the summertime, you go to bed before the sky turns red. And so she always asks me at night, she says, "Daddy, has the sky turned red yet?" And if she's gotten to stay up late and play with her friends, I'll say, "Well, the sky's already turned red, Joanna." And she's like, "Whoa, well, you let me stay up really late, Daddy." In Michigan, the sky doesn't turn red until 9 o'clock, and really doesn't. I mean, this is probably 9:30. And Laura, I didn't put it on here, but maybe you'll, when you teach, show some of your time lapses, where she actually put her phone up so that you could see the whole sunset. But what a remarkable picture. It was really meaningful to me to get to show my girls the place that I grew up, and to be there and sort of give them some time to see and be around where Daddy grew up, where Daddy was when Daddy was 4 and 2 years old. And of course, this is just an example of the great cathedral that God's creation is. So that's sort of the home piece, but a second piece of that in a sabbatical is what I call look back. And the verse that I had rolling around in my brain was that verse in Jeremiah that a lot of people quote, "For I know the plans that I have for you, says the Lord." And what's interesting about that verse is that it's not something that happens early in Jeremiah. It's actually quite late in the book. And one of my favorite biblical scholars, who died actually pretty recently, his name's Walter Brueggemann, he made the comment at one point, and never forgot it, that it's a verse that you could see as Jeremiah looking back on his life. Not just, "For I know the plans in the future that I have for you." I think it functions that way too. But it also, it's like Jeremiah is looking back at all that he's been through. And if you read the book of Jeremiah, the guy's been put through the ringer. He's been put through a lot. And he gets this chance to look back. And then he says, as he looks back, "For I know the plans that you have for me, O Lord," and gets to see the ways in which God was working, where in the moment he might have not thought God was present and active at all. I think this is the only picture you and I got of each other pretty much on sabbatical together. We just took pictures with our kids. We're bad at taking pictures, but this is on top of a dune in Lake Michigan, and we actually jumped into a Ford F-150 with our 16-year-old nephew, who you have to take the air out of your tires, and we just went riding on the dunes and like ramping up sand dunes. And so this is us at the top of this thing that's called Test Hill, which is this very, very, very steep dune that some trucks will drive up and you don't make it all the way up, and they have to like back all the way down. But this is a picture of me and Laura like fresh on this job, like yeah. You know those pictures of presidents 4 years after, where they're like their skin is, yeah. Anyway, there we are, fresh and ready. I don't know why. It reminds me of that show Deadliest Catch, where there's these guys who are called like I think they're called greenhorns or whatever, and it's like their first season, and they get out on the deck and they're just getting worked, right? Like they don't even know what they're doing. So anyway, there's Laura and Josh without kids, no care in the world, arriving at First Pres. And I've got a couple other pictures of just, you know. You remember during the pandemic, one of the wiser choices I made was to grow. Oh, sorry, Stephen. Stephen's offended. Yeah. And if you remember this one, we put this flower cross out on in a street during COVID and told people that if they wanted to, they could come and grab a flower off the cross. And you can't quite see behind it, but it says that the great gift of Easter is hope on there. That's Joanna. So that's my first time holding Joanna. The reason I show you these pictures is one of the things that me and Laura did is when we got 1 week just us two. So we had a lot of family time, and then we got a week us two, and the girls went to grandparent camp. And we had other than leaving for conferences once a year, we never really had time overnight away. So, I mean, I remember when we first arrived at the cottage and dropped the girls off, it was like, like rap music playing, you don't even know. But if you're a young parent right now, you know what I'm talking about because you've done it. But we decided that we were going to wake up every single day and walk the beach first thing. And it ended up being about an hour and a half. And we decided, since we had 7 days together alone, that we were going to talk about 1 year at First Pres. And just talk about it. It was really amazing. I mean, it was amazing to see all of the things that had happened. Right? Like you go from these two to that guy, right? We talked about COVID, right? We had been here 18 months when COVID hit. And I remember just saying, Laura, in February of 2020, I kind of feel like I know how to do this job a little bit. Like I think I'm getting the hang of this just a touch. And then the next month, we became professional epidemiologists. So we talked about that time. We talked about the difficulties, and we went through these different questions. What were the joys of that time? What were the difficulties of that time? And always at the end, what were the gifts of that year? We even gave each year a slogan and a Bible verse. And you know, we live in a society that if you watch commercials at all, you see the ads during football games, everything is about optimizing the future. Everything is about looking toward what's next. Everything is about innovating for tomorrow, right? And some of you probably work in industries where you hear those words, and I don't have anything against what's happening in the future, but we don't like as much to look back to the past. And in fact, the only times that we do something that's called nostalgia, which is sort of an idolization of the past. But what a gift it was to spend 7 days just sort of slowly looking back, like the prophet Jeremiah did, and looking back and being like, man, in that moment, that first Sunday, when we were all worshiping in our homes and had no freaking idea what was going on, it really felt like God was absent. But seeing what happened through this congregation, through that really difficult period in our world's history, for I know the plans that I have for you, says the Lord. I can say that now with the eyes of faith, what I couldn't say back then. God is always most at work in the moments in our lives where we feel God is at the time, most maybe possibly not at work. You look back and you see that God was there, that God was present. So having this time to look back, to return to the past, to befriend the past, to talk about our mistakes, talk about the things that we did well, to see the ways that we grew. We felt, honestly, just a lot of gratitude for this congregation. I mean, Laura was 27 and I was 29 when you guys hired us. We had just done a pastoral residency, a glorified internship. That was our experience. And on the CLC, the Church Leadership Connection, this church's information said that you had to have 10 years experience as a head of staff. We had 2 years experience under a head of staff. So we would kind of joke like, was kind of a dumb decision. Why did they do that? Like looking at the stats involved, like what were they thinking? But in all seriousness, just gratitude for what God has done. And a lot of pastors that we know warned us, and they said, when you return back from sabbatical, people might be fighting, the church building might be on fire, like you never know. And we returned back, and our church was on a mission trip. Right? Like what a beautiful thing. We returned back, and the church was doing something, giving their lives away to somebody else, and it just felt like, yeah, that's just who First Pres is. And we reflected on the fact that Joanna and Phoebe came into the world in this congregation, and if you were just in 830, you saw that both of our girls, I don't know what they were doing, but they kind of refused to leave or sit down, and so they were just sitting right by the communion table with Laura, who was about to preach. And there are a lot of contexts in which that would not fly in churches, but you guys have just taken care of us in that way, and they've become First Pres mascots or whatever you want to call them. Just wide open, especially Phoebe, wide open. But that has been one of the just quiet gifts of the last 7 years. Is you always are from where you're from, but the place your kids are born, you sort of feel like you're from too, right? And this is where they're born, this is where they've been raised, and this is where they're learning the faith in the midst of you all. And when we visited other churches, and I'm not going to share too much about the other churches because I think Laura's going to want to share about that. But we visited all sorts of different kinds of churches, and that was a real gift just to sit and have the experience. It's like Undercover Boss, that show, where it's like you get the experience from the other side. That was really great to visit other churches and be like, oh, that's interesting how they did that. But also, one of the difficult things I will admit about being a pastor is it is hard when you're on and trying to prepare for worship in the middle of worship to actually worship. You really, and I'm sure Blaine probably feels this way about playing in worship too, you really want so badly to worship, but you also know that you got to get up there and say something, and you're thinking about, am I going to say anything that's meaningful? Is it good? Should I throw that story out? Are they going to laugh at this joke at 11 o'clock? Probably not. If they laugh at 11, you have a future in stand-up comedy. And last week I got a laugh at 11. So, but you don't get to. It's hard to find a way to worship, and secondly, it's you realize how much you need a pastor, because if you're the pastor, everybody needs to be ministered to, right? Like at the core of who God is a minister. God is someone who ministers to us. And that's all we pastors are doing, is we're just trying to remind you that God ministers to you. And so you realize after 7 years that you need to have a minister as well. So I'm going to circle back to that a little bit. Okay, so that time of reflecting. So this is actually a book I'm reading right now. It's titled Anam Cara. It's a Celtic phrase that means soul friend. Not S-O-L-E, but S-O-U-L, soul friend. And so think for a moment about, and it may be your spouse, and it may be your spouse and somebody else. It's not just a romantic idea. The idea of a soul friend is someone with whom you can share the deepest, darkest in your life. And someone with whom, for whatever reason, whether it was in college or maybe it was recently or it was whatever, in grad school and high school, you just connected sort of on a soul level. And this book that I'm reading by a guy named John O'Donohue is really, really wonderful and explores this idea more in depth. Talks about how one of the things that Jesus says to his disciples is that I have called you friend, and that at the core of who God is with us is God befriending all of who we are. So I got to spend some time with different friends and mentors. And one of the things I really wanted to make sure I did on sabbatical is spend time with people who are in the same business that I am, right? You know how good it is if you go to a conference and you get to talk shop with people who actually know the ins and outs of your business, right? It just feels good. You don't even have to really say it. You can laugh at the same stuff. You can talk about the same struggles, and it just feels good to talk shop. So I wanted to spend some time with people like that. This is a picture of us worshiping at St. John's. Laura was away on her solo trip, so it was me and the girls against the world. Notice the matching dresses? That was me. Yeah. Maybe the greatest achievement of all sabbatical was, and that's Pastor James Demmel. If you don't know, he's the associate pastor for outreach and youth at St. John's. He's become a really close friend of mine. So this is, Laura and I each did a solo trip on sabbatical. So we had time with family. We had time just us two together. And then we said, well, let's each do a solo trip. Just sort of a like, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? What do you want to read? All that kind of stuff. And so for mine, I went out to Washington and Oregon. Again, I felt like I wanted to go back to the places where God initially sort of gave me my call. And Michigan was one of those with my family. But really the place where I started to feel the nudge to go into ministry was in Washington. And when I was a junior in college, I was playing Frisbee out on campus, and this guy was talking to one of my best friends about doing this internship with an organization called Youth for Christ, which is sort of similar to Young Life. I'm sure there's some Youth for Christ in this area, though I think Young Life's a lot stronger here, but Youth for Christ is all over the place, working with youth. And he came up to me and said, well, we've got another slot. And for whatever reason, I have no idea. I was like, yeah, okay, let's do it. Sounds good. And so they placed me at a middle school and at a church. And the church that they placed me at was Bellevue Presbyterian Church, east of Seattle. Bellevue is the land of Google and Microsoft and all of that kind of techie stuff. And I didn't know what a Presbyterian church was at that time. When I was 20, I grew up Wesleyan, sort of non-denom, in the Christian Reformed, the CRC world, which is very, very West Michigan. And so I started going to this Presbyterian church, and I was a part of the middle school youth group. So that's sort of where the youth ministry thing started. And after that year, when I was graduating college, the youth minister there came and asked me, do you want to be a youth intern? And I was like, well, I'm trying to, if any of you were here last week, you heard the joke that I told about wanting to stick around Seattle so that I could try to get Laura to marry me. But and so yeah, I stuck around and I did youth ministry for those 2 years. And during those 2 years, this guy, Pastor Scott Dudley, is the senior pastor of that church. He was then and he still is now. He reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to write research papers for his sermons. Now, I'm a 22-year-old, fresh out of undergraduate, have had some training. This guy's got a PhD in literature from Stanford and has been a minister and for 15, 20 years. He's got no business asking me to write a research paper for him. But he knew that I needed money. He knew I was poor. And he knew that I needed a mentor. And so when I was 20, we developed this relationship. And for the last 7 years, I'm on Scott's calendar once a month, and we talk. We talk about life. We talk about ministry. We talk about this church. And he got, if Scott, I have no idea what to do about this. What would you do in this scenario? And over time, I have come to realize that Scott's my pastor. And so we got to spend a day together. We're actually on a ferry in this picture. That's the Puget Sound behind me, mountains all around. And we went to a place called Whidbey Island, which is this island on the Sound, picturesque, surrounded by mountains. But for probably 18 hours straight, we just talked about life and ministry. And it was wonderful to be reminded of the need for having a pastor and having a mentor, which is, a great reminder for everyone in this church that we all need to be discipled by somebody, and we all need to be discipling somebody, mentoring somebody. So if you don't have that person who is speaking into your life, what would it mean for you to start praying and asking that God would bring that person into your life? And if you have that person, you have somebody who is speaking into your life and mentoring you, but you don't have somebody that you're mentoring, what would it mean to start asking God to bring somebody in your life that you could mentor and come alongside of? Because, Scott and I have been friends for 16 years, and he's dug me out of the trench many times. And I just can't say how meaningful it was to spend time with him. And the last night that we were together, it was late. I was getting ready to go to bed, and he said, no, Josh, sit down. And he took 15 minutes and just told me all the things he appreciated about me, and then he laid his hands on me and he prayed for me. And it was such a gift. It was such a lovely thing. I have I want to show you this video really fast. It's a really short video, but I just want to give you an idea of the beauty of this place that I was at. Hopefully this works. We'll see. That's Scott's voice in the background. Pretty beautiful, huh?
Yeah.
Right, time-wise, got a little bit. I want to show you this picture. So, one moment. Try to get this full screen. Okay, there we go. So the morning after Scott prayed for me, I was on East Coast time. I'm not a morning person, by the way. Once a year, I wake up early, but it was like 4:30 in the morning. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I woke up and poured myself some espresso and went outside to the beach. And the sun was beginning to rise after a little while, and there were people lining the beach who were fishing for salmon, just all over the place. And I started looking at these rocks that had been smoothed out by the water, and I picked out seven rocks, one rock for each year that I had been here at First Pres. And I looked out at the mountains, and I was in the place 30 miles from where I met law, from where I first studied theology, from where I first felt called to ministry, and I just got this overwhelming sense. I looked at the mountains, and the thing that I heard God saying was, I made all of this, like this show that you're getting right now. I did this. Imagine what I can do with a Dutch kid from Holland, Michigan, in Salisbury, North Carolina. So stop trying to do it all on your own and make things happen, and just trust that I've got it. Just trust me. And it was a really significant moment for me. This picture turned out to look like an old school Polaroid for some reason, which is kind of cool. This guy with the mustache, Stephen, you see the mustache? This guy right here, his name is Mark McHugh. Laura and I met him when we were at Seattle Pacific University. And then he came to Duke Divinity School and lived across the street from us with his wife. He is now a Peace USA minister and was on sabbatical at the same time. So we talk about getting to talk shop with somebody at least once or twice a year. Me and Mark get together. I would put him in the Anam Cara category, in the soul friend category. I hope to have him here for a preaching series sometime, because he's a really, really dynamic speaker and preacher, but he lives in Olympia with his wife and kids. So we got some time together in Oregon, and also some time together in Washington. This is a picture of this. It's called Boston Harbor. I don't know why it's called that, but it looks like something you would see in Maine. But all these people, there must have been 200 people on this beach with music playing and children running around in the water. This was just gorgeous. All right, last but not least, got to read a lot on sabbatical, and a lot of poetry and fiction. Those were the two things that that I really wanted to read. And has anybody read this one? Yeah, okay. This after I got done with this book, I immediately put it in my top 5, All the Light We Cannot See. I really love the way it was written. It's written with these small little vignettes of 3 to 4 pages at a time, and so it's a big book, but it's very, very readable. I mean, you can literally pick it up for 7 minutes. You've got 7 minutes to read and read a couple pages and then put it back down. And it slowly builds and tells the story of this young French girl and a young German boy who are on 2 different sides of what's happening in World War II, and shows how through a series of events their lives collide, and slowly throughout the book they're sort of getting closer and closer to one another. And it gives you, as any good literature does, a deep empathy and love and appreciation for these 2 human beings who, by virtue of where they are born, are on completely different sides of this huge moment in history. And what I found so helpful about this book, beyond the fact that just the writing is beautiful, I mean, really funny and deeply, deeply sad and beautiful at the same time, is it was a perfect time in our world to read this book. Such a reminder of what happens when you slow down and think about the lives that people on different sides of these historical events are living. And how right now our world, I think, longs for people who will take the time to slow down and imagine what the life of somebody who disagrees with them or who lives a completely different way in the world, or who posted that thing on social media about Charlie Kirk or whatever, because we live within a time where our politics are a politics of rage, right? And reaction, and we're all feeling that right now. Laura and I have talked a lot about that recently, like, why is it that Charlie Kirk's death has brought this whole conversation? And I think it's less about the symptoms, which is what a lot of people like to argue about the symptoms. It's more about what's underneath it. And what's underneath it is that we live in a culture that's disconnected and that is fraying, and that people feel just far from one another and far from themselves, and feel angry and sad. And so, reading a theology book is fine, but literature is supposed to narrate for us what human lives are like and to give us what is most important, which is empathy. How do we have empathy for others? Because empathy is eroding. It's eroding in all of us right now. It's certainly eroding culturally. So I found that book. I don't want to say more about the book because I don't want to spoil any more. But lovely. One other thing that I did, which captains and elders in our church are doing right now, is I took a leadership course called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. We have used this guy, Pete Cesaro, with our elders at elder retreats. And the whole course is sort of explores the ways that in our childhood, through our emotional lives, through our interior lives, what's always going on inside of us, how those things connect with our spirituality, our faith, and our discipleship. It asks you some pretty hard-hitting questions. It really forces you to turn back and to face difficult things from your childhood, difficult things that happen to you in your life. It forces you to face things about yourself that you don't love. It forces you to face whatever your defense mechanisms are, and spend some time sitting with those things and wondering about how exploring who we are and what has happened in our lives to us, where God can meet us there, and it was a really healing thing to do. I would highly recommend it to anybody. I know it's something that's happening right now in a smaller way in our church, but really, really, really significant stuff for me. All right, that's it. So haven't covered everything that we did, but that's kind of the 35,000-foot view. Any questions or observations, or do I hear a motion for me to go on sabbatical next summer? Not quite. Okay. All right. Or, yeah. How many? 13? Was it that many? Wow, 13. There you go. Yeah, but not denominations, but probably, we attended one Presbyterian church. Yeah, we went to First Presbyterian in Holland. We went to non-denom churches, black churches, Lutheran churches. We went to some of the churches here in town. Catholic Mass at a monastery. That's one thing I didn't mention, but I'll let Laura maybe talk more about that. Both of us at different times went to Mount Angel Abbey in Oregon in the Willamette Valley, where we had a couple of days at a monastery where the monks are, which was a fascinating experience. And the only thing I'll say about that is just thinking about how quietly and gently they live their lives was remarkable. Just to be around people who possess such stillness was really lovely. Any other questions? All right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the gift of sabbatical. All right. Go in peace, friends. Thank you so much.
You can see the ball games in Detroit.
I didn't. I wish that I had.